Hey guys, this is PV Guy and we're back with another episode of Around the Home, and we're talking about this self-contained planter right now. We're going to talk about how to build one of these. This is a garden barrel, or garden tower as it's called sometimes, and it is a container that will plant about 50 plants in a 4 square foot area. It's got a worm composting tube and it's pretty cheap to make. So stick around, we're going to build one. Alright, so I was searching YouTube for container gardening and raised beds and kind of stuff like that, and I came across the Half-pint Homestead, and they had these garden barrels, and I thought they were pretty cool. So I'm going to put a link down in the description to the original video that I saw, and I thought, hey, I'd try to make one of my own. So the first thing I needed was a 55-gallon plastic drum. Got bugs out here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to end up putting little pockets in this all the way around so we can put all our plants in there. So I picked this up off of Craigslist for about 10 bucks. Just make sure when you pick them up that they were used to house food-safe items as opposed to chemicals and things like that. So the first thing that I got to do is I need to take the top off because we won't be using that, and that way I can also clean it. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. Alright, so the top of this barrel, we want to retain this lip here. This is going to be a nice structural piece, so we need to kind of cut on the inside here. One thing that you can use is you could use like a Sawzall and cut around there, or another option is what I'm going to use, and I'm going to basically drill a hole with my drill bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut around with a jigsaw, and I'll just cut around the edge. And if I don't get close enough because of the jigsaw guard, then I'll go ahead and just use this little handsaw and kind of cut through there. These things, by the way, rock pretty good at cutting PVC and things like that. I really like them. Now these barrels, like I said, you can pick these up pretty cheap. Some people have said that they can get them from like Coke distributors, soda people, where it's got the soda pop syrup in there, and they come with these really nice gaskets on there. So if you're looking for long-term storage, rain bucket, things like that, you can pick these up really cheap. Like I said, 10 bucks on Craigslist. Just as a disclaimer here, we're working with power tools. We're using saws and drills and rounded surfaces. So be careful and wear your safety glasses. So I'm going to cut this off and then we'll take a look inside. Alright, pretty cut and dry. We just cut the lid off here as close as we can get it to the edge without disrupting this rigid lip here. And this will be basically the top of our planter. We'll be able to plant crops up here at the top. Now in the center, this is the key to the whole system, is in the center is going to be a tube that is going to be used for composting with worms, and we'll get more on that later. It's a pretty neat little system. I'm going to go ahead and clean it up, but I just wanted to point out that on my jigsaw I was able to take the base off. That's how I was able to get a little bit better angle and cut it a little bit closer to the edge. So let me get this cleaned up and we'll continue on with putting together our garden tower. Alright guys, so now that we've got the bucket cleaned, we got to put all the marks on there for where we're going to put in our pockets. Now the number of pockets that you're going to use kind of depends on what you want to do, but all the videos and things I've seen online say that you can do 50 plants in this container. You'll do 45 in the pocket and 5 up on top. So these pockets right here are about 4.5 inches, okay, and that puts me with about 3.5 inches in between. We're going to be using a 2x4 to make out the pockets later. So that's kind of what I did. I have 5 rows and 9 pockets on each row. You can kind of mess around with to figure out what works best from you. What I did though is, because there's this lip right here, the bottom of the curve on the inside of the lip stops right here. So I came down about, I don't know, about 5 inches or so, and I wanted to make sure that I had about 5 inches on the bottom as well, just so I had a little bit of soil underneath the plant before we hit the bottom of the bucket. So first thing we're going to need to do is use a drill with a 3/8 inch drill bit. We're going to drill out each end, and then use our jigsaw, or you could use a Sawzall, whatever, and cut that out in between. Alright, so now we got all our holes drilled and all the openings cut. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is when you're setting up your where you're putting your pockets, make sure that you're staggering them. So that way when this one's open, it's not going to shade in and the plants will be able to kind of have their own little growing column, so to speak. So the next thing we need to do is open up these pockets. Now to do that, I'm going to use a heat gun. This is a Wagner, what is it, HT 3500. It's got an adjustable temperature. You could use any heat source, really, any heat tool. The lady in the Half-pint Homestead video used a rather large blowtorch in her living room, which I don't necessarily advise, but you know, use what you have. Keep in mind that when you heat plastic, it's going to give off vapors, so try to do this in a ventilated area. Now, it's going to take a little practice, but once you heat it up, you're going to want to heat it up in this whole area right here, okay? That way you can push the top portion in and pull the bottom portion out. Now to do that, I took a 2x4 and I cut it at an angle, and so essentially I'm going to wedge that in there and push up to try to bend this top portion in, and then I'll pull it down to bend that out. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So here's an example of how some of the pockets came out. This one is a little bit more level. The backside is pushed in more. And that's the way that I've been doing it and the way I just showed. Now this way, this one's a little bit more pushed down. This part is not as far in. And what I did with this one is I put the board in there and then leveled it off. And it's probably not the best way to do it. You're probably going to want a pocket like this. That way the dirt won't come out. Now here's another example of the way I showed. But what's nice is I could reheat this and just redo it. You know, this plastic will mold pretty easy. So this is the long and lengthy part. And if you have a bunch of boards, you can do it, you know, multiple pockets at a time, and it will speed you up. All right, so we got all the pockets done on the whole bucket, and I went ahead and used an X-Acto knife and did a little trimming. Just try to clean up the edges a little bit. So the next thing we need to do is put in some drainage. So we're going to flip this over and put in the drain hole. So the bottom of your bucket might differ a little bit from mine, but I have a little handle thing over here on this side, but I have this little flat spot over here. So we're going to make this into the drain. The drain is going to be used when we water it. Any excess water is going to come out the drain hole. We're going to want to collect that and pour it back in, because that water is going to have a lot of nutrients from the soil and the worm castings that are going to be in there as part of our worm composting tube. So I'm just going to use a 3/16 or 3/8 bit, sorry, and I just put some holes right in here. All right, so here's the drain. Used a 3/16 inch drill bit and just drilled a bunch of holes in there. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in the worm composting tube. Now this tube is going to stick out the bottom a little bit, and it's going to have a removable plug so we can pull out the compost once our worms get done eating all of our scraps. Now the original plans called for a 6-inch PVC pipe, but I had some 4-inch lying around, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So what I'm going to want to do is find the center, and then I'm going to draw out my 4-inch hole and cut it out with the drill, and then make some pilot holes with the drill, and then use the jigsaw to cut it out. Now if you're using a 6-inch, just find the center and make your hole for the 6-inch. You want to make sure though that this hole is pretty tight, because we are going to need to seal it. We don't want any water to come out the bottom of this hole. So the tighter you can get the actual opening, the easier it will be to seal up later on. Okay, so once you have the hole for your worm tube put in, you're going to need some other parts, little PVC parts to go along with it. As I said, I opted for the 4-inch, and that made finding parts a little bit easier. If you've got a 6-inch pipe, it might be a little harder to find some of these parts. First thing we're going to need is a cap right here. And this will go on top, so we'll put our food scraps in through the hole, and we'll put that top on there to keep the bugs and things out. Now on the bottom, we're going to want to be able to open up the bottom of the tube here, okay? And that way we can get all of our compost out when we're done. Just so you know, the barrel is flipped upside down, so it's kind of in reverse at this point. So what I found is this fitting right here. What's cool about this fitting is it actually fits on the outside, okay? And so this lip right here, we're going to use this to our advantage, and there will be no lip on the inside. These two pieces will end up flushing, meaning flush, and it'll be a little bit easier to get our compost out. Now we also have a little cap. I opted for the plug here that didn't have the square part. I opted for this little handle. I figured it'd be easier to undo than the plugs that just had the square in there. Okay? Now, let's go back here. Let's talk about this lip. So this lip we're actually going to use, once we glue this piece on there, this lip is going to marry up to the bottom, okay, of the bucket here. And we'll put a little bead of silicone in there when we squish it together, and that'll give us a nice tight seal there. Now on the interior, I have this little piece. What this is just a chunk of the 4-inch that I took off and then split down the middle and then heated up a little bit so it can go around on the inside. I'm going to use this sort of as a, I don't even know what you'd call it, like a bushing or something on the other side of this. So essentially, when it's all said and done, the bottom of the barrel is going to get sandwiched in between these two pieces, and I'll PVC glue this and I'll PVC glue this, and then there'll be a bead of silicone in there with the barrel in there, and that should give us a good tight seal. We're going to have an opening at the bottom to get our compost out, and we're going to use our cap to put on the top. So now I just need to basically cut the pipe to length and then fit it. Let me just say that this is this particular piece right here was called a DMV female adapter. I'll see if I can't find the SKU number from Home Depot and stick that on there for this and the plug, just so you guys know exactly which part I was talking about. So we're going to get all that glued up, and then the last thing we'll need to do is put some legs on and paint it up. So this is how the worm tube is going to look inside the bucket. But one thing that we need to do before we glue everything in place is to drill holes inside of this main tube so the worms can come in and out and get our food. So what I did at the bottom is I made a mark that would be just a little bit higher than where my little PVC spacer is going to be. And then I also made a mark up here at the top to give me an idea of the range that I need to do the holes. So let's take this thing apart. We're going to drill in some 3/8 inch holes. All right, so here's the holes, just randomly kind of putting a line here every couple inches. This way the worms will be able to move into the compost that you put in there and eat it up and do their job. So I almost forgot that part, which is possibly one of the most important parts. I've got the plug down here at the bottom glued on, so I'm ready to glue this into place. But before I do that, I want to put the legs on. That way I can use the worm tube hole to put in the washers and the bolts. So for the legs, I went ahead and used 2x6 cedar. I went 5 inches up the side of the bucket, and I wanted to use the 2x6 so I had a little bit more of a shelf, so to speak, for the bucket to sit on. And I just cut out this nice little curve. You're going to have to match up the curve to whatever your bucket is. I put 2 bolts in here, 3-inch with a washer and a nut on the other side. And when I drilled the hole, I drilled it just slightly smaller so it actually kind of screws all the way through. So here we have legs installed. You can see they kind of match up to the body profile. We have this extra shelf here. Make sure that you leave enough room for your drain and an opening that you can get in and remove the compost whenever you're ready to do that. I went ahead and used 3 legs. You could use 4, but the 3 seemed pretty stable. So now I just need to put in the worm tube. Okay, so this is the bottom plug, dry fit at this point in time. And then coming up here to the top, you'll see at the bottom, right here, I have that little PVC collar, and that's to keep the worm tube from wanting to slide out the bottom. Now, the tricky part is going to be getting that PVC glued with the tube perfectly flush up against the bottom and sandwiched together. It may have been better to put the collar on first and then PVC glue the plug from the other side. Either way, we'll mess around. I'm going to put a little bead of silicone right around the bottom here, and then also on the bottom of the plug, and then just get it all nice and snug. You may need to use some tape to kind of keep the tube straight and stabilized until it completely dries. Alright, so here's the finished product on the garden barrel. I do need to add a little bit more dirt up here. I didn't get enough compost from the recycle center that we have in our municipality. They make compost and they sell it for about $5 a cubic yard, so it's a really good deal. And so I got a lot of compost in here, and I mixed in a little bit of hay and some organics and stuff like that to kind of get it going. And I've planted, these are just green onions. These are starts from the store. You just cut off the bottom green part, or the bottom white part, I'm sorry, with the roots, and just stick it in water, and they will start to sprout up here a little bit. So we're just going to kind of see how that goes. Down here at the bottom, you can see I got a little bucket underneath for when it rains, and the drain will release all the compost tea and stuff, and I can pour it back in there or use it on my other plants if I want to. And then right up here at the top, if I can get the cap off, you'll see down here, I don't know if you can see down there, but I've got some scraps in there already, and I did add some worms to the composter. We picked up some worms from bait shop and just kind of stuck them in there, red wigglers. So this is the final product on it, and it being at the end of September, I'm not really doing a whole lot of planning right now, but I'm hoping to kick this into a big giant salad barrel come spring. So there you have it, guys. This is the garden barrel. Pretty easy to build, not too expensive. So be sure to subscribe. I got more videos coming up soon, and next spring we'll see how this all comes out. So appreciate you guys watching.